So, gender differences in outcomes of cardiovascular disease is also dependent by the response to therapeutic and therapy that we do in men and female. So, male and female have different compliance in therapeutic opportunity, perhaps different effects in drugs. So the question maybe is for Dr. Page. So does the Y chromosome influence the response to drugs, cardiovascular drugs? So anybody has done some pharmacogenomic studies in terms of response to therapeutics somehow? And I have another question. So most of the epidemiological study that we have in different sex difference in cardiovascular disease came from so-called Western countries, so in which the environment has a big part in influencing this. So does the proportion in sex differences in cardiovascular disease also the same in non-Western countries, if we have any data, like Asia or Africa, something?
So, pharmacology, pharmaceutical development. I would say that there is absolutely no information today as to a possible role of those, the Y genes or the XY pairs. But when I said a few minutes ago that I think it's critical that we study sex differences not only in our own species, but also in other mammals, I was thinking in part actually about the pharmaceutical industry. You may know that essentially all preclinical drug safety testing that is done by the pharmaceutical industry, that I would ask you all to guess, on what sex of animals do you think drug safety testing is done? It's done exclusively on male animals. That's because, just as in so many areas of basic science, everyone knows that females are crazy, they have ovaries, they have ovarian cycles, and nobody wants to deal with this. They think this is a source of noise. I'm being facetious, of course, when I say this, but this is, but the pharmaceutical industry employs exclusively male animals in drug safety testing. As you know, some drugs fall out of the pipeline eventually because there are safety problems in one sex or the other. So the FDA and others are beginning to think, well, maybe we should do that safety testing in both sexes. That makes a lot of sense, but there's only one problem, and that is that not only are we just beginning to come to grips with sex differences in health and disease in our own species, we haven't begun to do it in other species, and we have no idea whether those sex differences will prove to be conserved between us and other mammals. So we have, it's a tremendous opportunity, it's a tremendous frontier, but so I will take your question and frame it in even that broader way.
Let me just add something, and this is that the drug industry is making, let's say, considerable progress. There are now the international harmonized guidelines, and I think in power since 2011, and this asks that toxicology is done in both sexes, also in the preclinical studies. So I think that's pretty good. And then your first question, on the sex differences in in metabolism, you were focusing on the Y chromosome, but maybe you just meant differences between men and women, and there is the whole cytochrome P450 family in the liver, and there are very well-known sex differences that are all, I think, all well described. So these are autosomal genes in most cases. I don't know where they are exactly located, but they still have a significant expression difference between women and men, what is quite interesting and also important for pharmacology.
I also expand. What an excellent question. from the clinical world of clinical trials in heart failure, right? So I think one of the main issues is that women are grossly underrepresented in heart failure trials, so that all we can do is subgroup analyses. And so I don't think any of us can really name specific drugs where, you know, the sex interaction is so significant, we expect a totally different response. But I would like to name 2 examples that perhaps tell us that we may need to start thinking about sex-specific dosing maybe, or side effects and so on. Metabolism, digoxin. We know that we need to really watch those levels in women especially. And CRT. CRTD is getting really, really obvious now that women benefit more than men at the same thresholds to apply these cardiac resynchronization therapy. And so to even take it further away from genetics, it's again maybe size. That by the time you qualify a woman with that wide QRS, it's actually much wider for her small heart than it is for a man, which is why CRT may benefit women even more. So there are numerous questions that I think need to be answered. Thank goodness, as Vera said, there's increasing attention, but I think there needs to be more. Yeah.